Okay, Appomattox, let's finish this war off. Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, is where Robert E. Lee surrenders to U.S. Grant. Now, can you see this already? Okay, wait a second. How about that? What? Ooh, but now we're looking at fish.
You just want to look at fish.
I made fish last night.
What?
I
Kind of?
didn't have dinner last night. Wait, what I have today?
I like
You didn't have
Usually
What
the
meat did you
yeah,
eat?
either way.
I
like fish, but not
I had these.
I had some
Okay, all right. A hush falls over the crowd because they want to know what happened. Yes. All right, so we're up in Petersburg. Robert E. Lee's army has been surrounded. Grant has put him into a siege. So they're waiting to starve out the Confederates, and the Confederates are getting pretty desperate. They've held on about as long as they can without going into starvation mode. And they're aware of what happened at Vicksburg, where everybody left and they were pretty much crippled because they had been without food for so long. Lee doesn't want that to happen to his army. He wants his army to be able to continue the battle. And so Robert E. Lee sends George Pickett out to take a place called Five Forks, the end of that red arrow there. Five Forks was a place where a number of roads and railroads crossed each other. It's a big transportation hub. And he thought, if I can get a hold of that, then I can move my army out, get them on board trains, hopefully, and I can get further away so that this army of the Potomac, Grant's army, cannot chase me. They won't be able to keep up or catch up. So I got to get out of here. I need Five Forks. And he sends George Pickett out to take it. And George Pickett is successful. He does take Five Forks. So now Lee's got a way to get out and escape. But George Pickett makes a serious mistake. He doesn't solidify his position. He doesn't build defenses up so that the Union can't just take it back. Instead, he goes off to a party where he has a delicious fish dinner, and then the Union comes and attacks, and they take it back. This moment,
Does he actually go to a party though?
he does actually go to a party, and he actually has a delicious fish dinner. That's not the actual fish dinner because George Pickett ate it. You know, I read a biography of Robert E. Lee a few years ago, and it talked about the delicious fish dinner that George Pickett had. And I thought, I wonder why they included that. Like, maybe he got food poisoning? Maybe he dies from this? Maybe there was a spy who slipped him some drugs or something so that he fell asleep and they could kidnap him. I kept wondering why they would include this whole business about this delicious fish dinner, and it never came up again. The answer was some historian who was trying to make points and say, oh, look at this information I have that nobody else has, probably found somebody's diary way back in some old dusty library or a personal collection and found out that George Pickett had a delicious fish dinner and put it in the book saying, ha, look what I found to add up to history. But I don't know why you need to do that. Please don't write down that George Pickett had a delicious fish dinner. It is completely and totally worthless in knowing that. Even if you did it, draw a line through it, please. I would never test you. Not only just testing, but you would never need to know that George Pickett had a delicious fish dinner. Yes, sir. One time out loud so I hear you the first time over here. I do not know. This is a vital question. Thank you for asking. Hamza, one time out loud so that I hear you.
Well, we can do the delicious fish dinner to remember the party.
You could. Yes, you could if that was important to you. Okay. Oh. All right. On April 2nd, Robert E. Lee says, that's it. I can't hold this place anymore. If I'm going to save my army, I've got to get out and just make a run for it. I don't have the ability to get on the trains anymore because the Union took back Five Forks, but we can just haul ourselves out of here and move as quickly as we possibly can. So on April 2nd, Robert E. Lee abandons Petersburg. He says, we're just running out of here as fast as we can. And he sent a message up to Richmond, to the Confederate government, to Jefferson Davis, saying, I'm leaving. I'm the only army around here, which means Grant's going to be sitting here. And Petersburg is very close to Richmond. He says, you guys need to abandon Richmond. You need to get out of there too. Now, this is where, if you recall, we said the Confederate government spent, and it was a really even number. And the Confederates lost this many people, and it was a really even number. And this is the reason, because on April 2nd, the Confederate government ran away. And they did exactly what Lee said. They just took to the hills, take the important papers, burn what you think might be damaging to you in a court, get out of there, spread out, try to get away. And as a result, there was no one for the armies to report back to, so they no longer kept detailed records. Okay, so there we have it. On April 2nd, Lee says abandon Richmond, and he abandons Petersburg. Now, Abraham Lincoln happened to be down near, or he was actually vacationing. I don't know how much of a vacation this would be when you're a wartime president, but he was vacationing, visiting Ulysses Grant down with the army. And when Richmond became the property of the Union, Grant, of course, once it was abandoned, sent some troops in there to take control. Then Abraham Lincoln toured Richmond. He drove in a carriage through Richmond, seeing what it looked like. It was pretty well, decimated, but he said, you could see a couple of eyeballs, peeking out through curtains and everything to see this devil Lincoln, this horrible guy. Did I tell you who the most hated man in the South was? Sherman, William Sherman, right, because it was marched to the sea. Well, Lincoln wasn't exactly a popular guy. But the only people that came up to him, for the most part, were former slaves who were now free. They understood that this is the guy who had done the Emancipation Proclamation. This is the guy who had said, you're not slaves anymore. Robert E. Lee tried to get away with his army, but Ulysses Grant is still working the arithmetic of war, still have to kill Confederates. They're still fighting the war. So Grant immediately moves after Lee. He's got such a huge numerical advantage. Lee is down to about 28,000 men. I mean, that's how badly his army's been decimated. Started this thing with 65,000 on May 4th of the last year. Now he's down to about 28,000 men. Lots of them just boys and old men, because that's all that was left in the Confederacy to pick up a gun. And Grant still has 200,000 men. And he's maneuvering, he's pushing Lee and forcing Lee to go in the direction he wants, and he traps him in a place called Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. And Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, it's apparent that if Lee continues to fight, Grant will simply wipe out his army and kill all of his soldiers. So Lee asks for terms, asks, when can I surrender? And at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865, Robert E. Lee surrenders to Ulysses Grant. His soldiers put away their weapons. They turn them over to the Union. Grant is generous in letting them go, but for the most part, the war is over. The big armies, the Army of the North won. There are other surrenders that come quickly after that. Joe Johnston can't avoid being chased by William Sherman, so he surrenders to William Sherman just a few days later. There's a man named Taylor, another general out in the West. He surrenders about 10,000 guys, a small army. And one more, Kirby Smith, had an army of about 20,000. So that means the total of all the Confederate armies, again, including lots of old men and boys, is 78,000 men. And at its peak, just the Army of Northern Virginia was 75,000 men. So the Confederacy's just been decimated. Then groups like Mosby's Raiders, they will all eventually surrender. Quantrill's Raiders, lots of them simply become bandits. Like I talked about Frank and Jesse James, Youngers. Yeah.
Wait, so, how much was the army of Northern Virginia?
28,000.
No. Oh, okay.
Okay? All righty. One of those little ironic footnotes to history. The last battle in the American Civil War was the Battle of Palmetto Ranch, Texas. And it was a Confederate victory.
Oh, that's stuff.
That's kind of, I'm gonna find a different word there, buddy. Okay, but yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of weird irony because the South had collapsed, their government was gone, most of the other armies had surrendered, and just one little final battle, and that was it. Thumbs up, nice and loud, so I hear you the first time.
What is the two-word abbreviation for Texas?
Capital T, capital X. Yes, sir.
Did the army win or did the army win the war or the battle?
I refuse to answer that on the basis that you know. Is the South a separate country?
No.
Then did they win the war?
No.
Okay. All right, cool. What is this? Oh, we're getting gang signs? Oh, Cody Splash will be gang signs. Okay. I believe that's what we have here. All right, tiny people, here's what's going on. On Monday, you have your quiz. I'm gonna have it written out, so we're gonna do it on paper again. I was just talking to Mr. Porter, most interesting thing, he said he's read studies where people taking tests online do not look as precisely, do not read as carefully, grades are lower. And I would say that's exactly right, because when I gave you what was marked Civil War quiz number 2, I gave it to you online, and the grades were not great. Pretty much a lot, not all of it, but a lot of Civil War quiz number 3 was what I had already done online. I just took it off and I kind of made it on paper and added a couple other things to it. And your grades were much, much higher.
Yeah.
So this one's also going to be on paper. Again, what did we say you had to know? You have to know the first 16 presidents.
Okay.
Somebody's.
John Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, or Adams,
Andrew Jackson.
Martin Van Buren.
Martin Van Buren,
John
So we're losing you. Here we got James Paul,
Taylor,
Henry Taylor.
Henry Harrison.
We already had William Henry Harris. You guys gonna put him in twice?
Okay, wait, so.
I know the.
Uh-oh.
All I know
Uh-oh.
all I know is George Washington, Taylor. I only know James Monroe, John Quincy.
Okay, so 1 through 16, now listen to me, folks. I just told you there are 16 questions on your test. If you come in here on Monday and say, geez, I don't know them, then you're throwing away points which I am giving to you right now. There are 16 questions on your test. I'm going to ask you to name in order, spelled correctly, the 16 presidents. Remember, you do not need examples of land, power, or religion. You do need to know the 9 dates. There's another gift. 9 more questions on your test. That would then be,
A lot of points.
that sounds like 25 questions, okay? Then I also said that you had to know 11 Confederate states.
36.
Wow, you got 36 questions on your test handed to you. Now, if you go home and say, yeah, but I'm not gonna look at that. Yeah, no. I'm all about sitting there playing a video game or, sucking my thumb, whatever I'm gonna do on weekends. Well, then you're kind of saying, I don't want points. Thank you. I prefer the D. I love a D. D stands for my grade. No, don't do that, please. Instead, take this opportunity. These are the free points. Yes, I will ask you a couple of questions that require you to think. No, there is not an essay on there. No, that was a one-time thing. You don't have to describe a battle. Let's see, what else? I want you to know the big things, understand the movements of the Civil War. I'm not going to ask you casualties at each particular battle. That's too much detail. What I want you to know is kind of how the flow of the Civil War went. Who's that?
Why is up there so packed?
What?
Why are there so many
I think
cars?
it's presentation.
I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's some up there, and they were also setting up chairs all over the field there. Okay. All right, cool. At home people, well, I hope there are none of you, so, well, I guess there are a couple of you still home. Hi, Lily. Okay, go ahead, turn that off.